So, hello everyone. This is Jen from Out of the Darkness Ministry, as you know. And in this episode coming up, Wade and we are interviewing Rachel. And this interview was about 3 hours long. So, we're breaking this up into two parts. And so, I hope that you guys like this.
Ancient warriors, prophets, kings, politics, conspiracies. No, this is just thousands of years of truth and history. It's the Word of God. And I'm Wade.
And I'm Jen.
And join us as we add oil to our lamps, learning from and applying the Holy Scripture to our lives. As we set out in a dark world and uncover the things that want to remain hidden by shining the light of Christ. Awake, O sleeper. This is Out of the Darkness. All right, so we're entering a portion of the show that Jen and I have dubbed Discovering the Saints. And with Discovering the Saints, Jen and I want to put a spotlight on the everyday men and women who are out there serving God that aren't on TV, that aren't writing #1 best-selling novels, that are salt of the earth people, like Jen and I. Salt in the earth. And we're all humans. Sometimes the salt that I'm using is the kind that sometimes I get a little salty. Sometimes I got to think about what I say after the fact. But hey, we're human beings. And we know who to go to for guidance, forgiveness, and all that wonderful stuff. And don't know why I went there, but hey, maybe that's for somebody. Because the world's getting crazy. There's a lot of distractions out there. There's a lot of things out there trying to get our attention, trying to take away from all of our relationships. And most importantly, trying to take our attention away from our relationships from God. And with so much happening, Jen and I have been thinking about how wonderful it would be to know that there's other people out there who are maybe struggling in a similar way or living in a similar way or what have you. I'm going to give a little testimony right off the bat here because this kind of spurred on the idea. And a week or so ago, I was having a pity party day, depressed. Even the weather outside reflected my position on the inside. It was dark, gloomy, gray, drizzle. The rain was drizzling. And the last thing I wanted to do is to take one of my pooches outside so that I could go explore and sniff around and use the restroom. But I'm out there. And just mind you, there's a lot of stuff was going on. And I was so negative. And of course, the rain is drizzling, but then like as soon as the dog we take the dog out I'm taking the dog out. The rain comes down harder. I'm like, of course, right? Of course. And so, and then sadly, the dog doesn't think the way I think. And so it's raining, go outside, go to the bathroom quicker. No, dogs need to explore. They need to sniff around. They need to do all that stuff, whatever. So getting rained on, and something else happened. Just put me over the top. Anyway, I'm walking back to the house, the dog in tow, and I'm just standing in front of the house, getting rained on, just looking around. And lo and behold, though, I hear something, and it was off, not too far off. I'm like, what? And it was music. And I'm like, huh. And I'm listening, and I'm like, oh, I've heard that song before. And it was like Soul on Fire by Third Day. And I was like, huh. If you understand the area that we live in, not exactly friendly to Christianity. This music was coming across the street, and there's some apartments across the street, and somebody had their window or their door. It was like a top apartment, and their doors open, and they were just blasting that. And I'm looking, and then I'm like looking around, and I'm like, "Thank you, Lord," because I totally had this Elijah moment. Because Elijah, even after going and the whole fire falling down from heaven, and him and against the prophets of Baal, and prove to the Israelites, who God really is. And then he gets a threat from Jezebel, and he's off, and he's like, "Oh God, just kill me. This woe is me. Kill me now." And he's complaining to God, I am the only one serving you, and it's just hopeless, these people. And God's like, "Look, listen, bro, Elijah, I got thousands of others who haven't bowed their knee to Baal, but I got stuff for you to do. So worry about the stuff." This is the Wade summarization of that. Okay, this isn't verbatim, but he's essentially telling Elijah, "I got stuff for you to do." Now it takes Elijah a little bit. He's like, I want to die." But that was so encouraging to know that, wow, there's others out there. Now, just hearing that made a huge difference in my day and my outlook on the rest of the day. It was crazy. It was it was a it was a blessing. It was a blessing from God. And it was also like, he flicked the back of my head like, get o- get over it, bud. Get over it. Get your dog in the house. Otherwise, you're going to be tracking prints everywhere. And you're going to have to clean that up. And I have to hear you complain about that too. And so I was thinking, man, more people need to know there's other people out there. I think a lot of us get caught up in, I don't know, televangelists or people who are out. I don't know. For me, there's like the main thing that we hear about are the people, I guess for a lack of a better word, doing exploits. But like we tend to think of exploits as something else than I think God thinks of that, right? We tend to place a worldly value on certain things. People making movies, people making documentaries, people making, having some kind of notoriety. And so we place a greater value on person or the task or whatever. When we know that God values the relationship with an individual, we're all on the same level to him. And so, like, I know because I'm not traveling across the globe, I don't know, building wells somewhere doesn't mean I'm not doing something for God. or I'm not making some kind of like internet series starring people and just blowing up YouTube, with something doesn't mean you're not serving God. But every blood bought, spirit filled, born again believer in Christ has a ministry, has a point, has a purpose. And, every one of you out there listening, you have a ministry. And it doesn't look like whoever else's ministry. It's unique to you. It's unique to the talents and gifts and abilities that God has given you. And by this whole segment, and part of Out of the Darkness and all of these things, we're uncovering things. We uncover the things that are in the dark, and we want to shine a light on various subjects and various things. And we want to shine a light on people to let other people know there's other people. And hopefully that encourages us. Jen, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty good.
Okay.
I'm
making
just
sure.
listening.
I'm making sure. Because I'm excited.
Me too.
And so, on this portion of Discovering the Saints, with us we have Rachel, our first guest. Rachel, how are you doing today?
I am well. How are you?
I'm not fully caffeinated, but I'm getting there. And so, without telling us exactly in every minute detail who you are, tell us who you are. What are you all about? The floor is open.
Oh gosh, no pressure.
None at all.
I had no idea who I am. But that was just a really good introduction. Actually, that was very encouraging because there are definitely times where I feel like I'm the onlyest one, and it's good to know that I'm not. And it reminded me of a time not too long ago, maybe about 4 or 5 years ago, where I was at work and I'm looking at everybody around me. Like, there are no Christians in this building. Like, I really felt like I was the only one. And I'm used to being in situations where I'm the only person who looks like me. But this particular occasion, it just hit me really hard that I felt so alone. But even though I know I'm not, like, God is always with me. But it's just there. It does get you down sometimes as a Christian when you're not surrounded by other Christians, or you feel like you just need that fellowship, and sometimes it's not there. But I don't know. But thank God for you too, because I love y'all.
We love you too.
Got something in my eye.
Well, I get what you mean because, I mean, look, the darkness, all of that stuff is just encroaching more and more.
Yeah.
And I think there's a multi-angled attack that the enemy is doing. And I think, some of that happened back when, when people started in the church started to become very tribalistic in their denominations, and that was kind of fracturing people. And now more so with more compromising in the churches and more worldly influences coming into the churches. I think that's kind of split and fractured and alienated some, and I think what we're seeing is the results of a lot of, again, planning and investments from the enemy from a long while ago, because we have to understand that Satan, the main fallen entity who's
Mm-hmm.
trying to run the show, his war is not necessarily with God anymore, because Jesus defeated him on the cross. Bam.
Yep.
It's the saints that he's warring with. It's the
Mm-hmm.
saints he's coming after. And feeling alone, feeling isolated, and I think the pandemic has done a great job at fulfilling one of those avenues. I
Yeah.
think that the powers that shouldn't be found a great opportunity, and I think a lot of these people who are in charge of, or who have high positions, or people in charge of various affairs of the world, I
Mm-hmm.
have no qualms about saying, like, I think the majority of them are controlled by fallen principalities and
Mm-hmm.
inspired by them, and do things unconsciously, but is all at the direct inspiration of them. And that's the one of the things that we're battling against. Shining the light on, and yeah, there are others out there who have not bowed their knee to Baal, and hopefully that through I'm hoping that people, and I'm talking about believers in Christ, connect even more on a deeper level, beyond miles, beyond denominational differences, beyond just differences in politics, and really focus on Christ. And yeah, okay, trying to put my
Yeah.
soapbox away here.
No, I agree. It's I definitely see a lot of that happening. I was just speaking to a friend of mine, and in her church, a lot of people have split over differences in politics and/or just handling this whole Rona situation. Like, some people are for the vaccines. Well, can I say vaccines? Some people are for the jab. Some people aren't for the jab. And so, just based on their stances alone in that, like, a lot of people left the church. And I was just like, are you kidding me? Of all the things to split over, you're going to split over a plastic tube with gunk in it? Like, I don't know. Like, now is not the time to be splitting over stuff like that. Like, where's the love of God, people? I don't know.
And you can see, like, it didn't take much to um create
That
this.
divide.
Exactly. It took a a virus with a 99.8% recovery rate. They
Mm-hmm.
didn't they didn't even have to unleash some kind of super plague upon people, just
Right.
ideology. And
Yeah.
it makes you question and wonder what kind of spirit is at the head of each church, or what's behind the individuals, wanting to divide over
Mm-hmm.
these issues. And
Right.
obviously, like Jen and I, we know people who have taken their jab. And I think if anyone's listened to any of us long enough, they know our positions on the jabs. But um, to stop fellowshipping, or
Mm-hmm.
ceasing contact, is a little ludicrous in my mind, but not for some.
Yeah.
I mean, they will divide
Nope.
on either side. I mean, there's people like, if you took that jab, oh, we're done. And then,
Mm-hmm.
of course, you see a lot. Hey, if you haven't got your jab, we we're done.
Right. Don't get your job, you can't work. Don't get the job, you can't go to church. Seriously? It's not like it's Ebola or rabies. That I would understand. And then like, that I would be like, yeah, you need to get your job. But this is just, I don't know.
Yeah, I just don't understand how, like you guys are saying, how people can divide over this. Like, why aren't people being more kingdom minded instead of worrying about whether we wear a mask or not, or whether we get, the jab or not? It's like, where's the love of Christ?
What's that scripture that says to bear the infirmities of the weak?
Mm.
Is it something like that? Like, where is your faith? Like, that you are going to tell somebody like they can't go to church or you can't fellowship with me because you don't have this jab.
Right. And then, even on the other side, people who, don't believe in it, there's a lot who tell others like, that's the mark of the beast and things like that. Because I've seen that and I'm like, oh my gosh, don't even go there, because that is going to cause such a huge stumbling block, because it's not the mark of the beast.
It's really not. And then it just makes, for lack of a better word, just makes other Christians look stupid.
Exactly.
It is not the mark of the beast, people.
Romans 15. I was like, yeah, that sounds like Paul. We who are strong must be considerate of those who are sensitive about things like this. We must not just please ourselves. He's talking about, so remember back in Romans 14, he's talking about food sacrificed to idols. People, they had, it would bear on some people's conscience to be able to eat that food or not. I think Paul's stance was like, it's just food, I'm going to eat it. But, for the sake of my brother over here, it's just bearing on his conscience so much, I won't eat because I don't want to cause him to stumble.
Right.
And so we've got other questions, but in that, like, it's cool that you mentioned Romans, because that book helped shape a lot of my theological formation, if you will. Because, hey, when I first got on board the Jesus train, it took, I don't know, about 5 more years for me to discover, like, oh, this is what I believe. I should really act on that belief.
Yeah. And then there was like,
some
deception that we fell into, and
then
thank God for his grace.
We got super hard into the truther stuff. And then, like, that was fun for a while until every single thing you see or every single thing that is around has some sort of occultic meaning. And then you can't enjoy life because you're like, and then you're just unhappy. And then you're just pointing things out like, it's Illuminati, Freemasons. Look at the symbology. But a little radical after a little bit, but then, and that was before even like reading more and starting to understand more, and God had mercy, and a little bit more calm about stuff now. And so, I mean, kind of with that, like, how did you come to know Jesus? What's your testimony?
Ooh, okay. You want to sit down for this? I'll be here all day.
Oh, I got coffee.
Okay. So this is a story all about how my life got turned upside down.
Nice.
Just kidding. Just kidding.
Stop fighting with people on the basketball courts. Stop it.
I can't help it. My mom shipped me off to Bel Air.
That's pretty ritzy over there.
It is. Too rich for my blood. So, all right. My mom had me when she was a teen, like 17 years old. So she was unwed for a while, and when I was about 7, she met my stepdad. They got married, and then one summer, my stepdad just happened to take the bus to work, where he met a preacher. The preacher told him about the gospel, invited him to church, and my dad started going to church. And then when me and my mom, we were actually in Virginia at the time. When we got back home, my dad was like, "We're going to church." So I said, "Okay." And then when I was about 8 years old, I got baptized, and I've been serving the Lord since. But it's funny like that you asked me that question because I've often like thought back to different situations in my life and like noticed how the Lord has had His hand in my life from the very beginning. So like that day that I mentioned, like if my stepdad just happened, well, no, so my mom just happened to meet my stepdad. My stepdad just happened to meet that minister and invite us to church. And like if none of those things happened, like I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be saved. And it's just crazy, like how many times in my life when it's like if I had gone a different way or I made a different decision, I wouldn't have known the Lord and I wouldn't have been saved. So I got baptized at 8, and at that time we lived in Connecticut. When I was about 10, we moved to Boston. So that was a huge change for me. And like even then, the Lord was moving in my life and I didn't even realize it. Well, try not to get that in detail because it's a long story. So I grew up in Boston, and then when I was about, I'll say,
Hold on a second. You said
but,
you grew up in Boston.
mm-hmm.
How come you don't talk like you're from Boston?
Because I was born and raised in Connecticut. I can't do a Boston accent.
Boston.
It's hard.
Neither can I, obviously.
Yeah, it's really hard. And the weird thing is, when we moved to Boston, I had no idea who the Patriots were. Like I thought they were a college team. And somebody was like, "No, they're pro football." And I was like, "Really? Never heard of the Patriots."
Somebody spit their drink out somewhere.
I have no idea. And I'm still not a Patriots fan, so
Yeah, me either.
that's not happening.
I don't watch football anymore, so
You don't watch football?
I barely did before, and I don't anymore.
What? So un-American. Grew up in Boston. Don't have a Boston accent. And I was about, well, when I started college, was when a lot a lot of things like started going wrong, I guess, or a lot of things started happening. Um, so I suffered from migraines since I was a kid, and then I think gradually started getting worse in high school and in college. Like sometimes like my migraines would be so bad that I'd get a nosebleed, and like my nosebleeds would last for like hours. It was so weird.
You couldn't move anything with your mind after that, though?
I tried. One time I actually did try to like bend a spoon. Didn't work. Even like the spoon is not there. There is no spoon. Didn't work. So in college, it's my sophomore year of college, my neurologist put me on this medication that made me hallucinate. So that was fun. Started seeing things. Started like, and had like a whole host of other side effects. So like while I'm going crazy from my migraine medication, my parents, their marriage started falling apart, and it started affecting me because I sort of was like in the middle of this battle, like between my parents, and my mom would often like try to use me to hide things from my dad, as like one example. So let's see. One particular day, I was in like so much pain that I said to myself, I was like, I need to get out. I need to do something to get rid of this pain that I'm in. And I walked downstairs. At that time, we lived in this old Victorian house, and my bedroom was in the attic. And so I walked downstairs to the second floor, standing at the top of the stairs. And mind you, we had hardwood floors at the time. So I said to myself, I was like, you know what? Let me just throw myself down the stairs. Maybe I'll break an arm or a leg or something, and it'll like put me in the hospital, and I will just have it'll just be long enough for me to get away and recoup and recover, and then I can come back and I'll be fine. But then something told me, it was like, girl, you know that if you throw yourself down the stairs, you can break your neck. And what would God think? Like if you committed suicide right now, do you seriously want to disappoint the Lord like that? And I was like, oh, no. So like I felt something that was like physically stopping me from falling down the stairs, and I backed up and didn't do it. So, so needless to say, like I was really at the time I wouldn't have said depressed, but I was, because it was just like things were getting really bad at home, and then my grades were suffering because of it. Like I was trying hard to keep up like straight A's, but my grades were slipping and it was really bad. Like I was actually getting an A in calculus, but I had to withdraw because like, I went from an A one day to like an F the next, and I asked the dean of the college at the time, like, can I take a year off because I really need some time to myself, and they were like, no, you can't. So I had to force my way through college, and then after college, I started working in finance, which was like the last place I wanted to work. But I was actually studying to become a doctor. I had taken the MCAT, I passed, but not as well as I wanted to. So I was going to study, take a year off, study, and go back. But my dad was like, no, you need a job. So I got a job in finance. Fine, that's good. Actually did really well. As I loved my job. But again, like the emotional roller coaster that was going on, like caught up to me, and I started not to do. It started like showing in my work that like I wasn't doing well at work, and then my parents' marriage was even like getting even worse. My dad had actually moved out because he thought that would make my mom happier, like if he left, and it would make her stay in the house so that I wouldn't be by myself. But that's that's like a side note, issues with my mom. So my dad moved out. My mom she stayed home, kinda, like, but she was there, but she wasn't there. So I still was alone, driving an hour to work every day, commuting, and I went, things like, so let me back up. So one day my mom called me at work and she was like, leaving your dad. And I was like, okay. And she's like, when you get home, I won't be there. Like, great, you're calling me at work to tell me this? Like, this is not the best time to be doing this. But she ended up staying a little bit longer. And then I think like a couple of months later, she called me again. This time I was at home and she's like, yeah, I'm divorcing your father and I'm leaving. I'm not coming back. I'm like, great. Okay. Bye. And it was just, like part of me, it kind of hurt because on the one hand, like she's leaving her only daughter and she didn't even ask me to go with her. And on top of that, she's leaving me with a man who's not my biological father. Like, what kind of mother would do that? So I was like, fine, okay, if this is what you want to do, then I'm not going to stop you. And I actually, like, even if she did ask me, I wasn't going to go with her because I don't have a good relationship with my mom. Even before she married my stepdad, like, we were never, like, it was really the exact opposite. So I wouldn't have gone with her even if she asked. But even then, like, it's so weird in that the Lord was even in that situation because, like I said, like if she had not married my stepfather, I would have never gone to church, and I would never had the opportunity to meet the Lord, and I probably would have ended up like a teenage mom just like her. And don't get me wrong, nothing's wrong with teenage mothers, but like my whole it's so prominent in my family on in my mom's side of the family. Like everybody's a teenage mom. Everybody's not is an unwed mother. And that's one of the things I vowed when I was young. Like I do not want to become an unwed mother. On side note, like if I never get married, I'm fine with that because I'm not going to perpetuate that cycle. I'm not going to be like my aunt. Thank God that like my stepdad was there the entire time while I was growing up because I had that male figure in my life. I had somebody who was sane, basically, who kept me on the straight and narrow. And then, like, when my parents got divorced, I was happy because, like, finally I could get a dog. Like, my mom left, she got, like, half his pension, and I got 2 dogs, and I was happy.
What kind of dogs did you get?
I got 2 Schnauzers.
Oh.
Yeah, I love them. Cause, like, well, that's another thing. Like, growing up, my mom had always promised me that I can get a dog when we buy a house and have a yard. So when we did finally get a house and a yard, she said no. She said I couldn't get a dog. And then when they got divorced, first thing I did was like, can we get a dog? My dad's like, yup. So it worked out. And then, let's see. So, like, my parents are divorced. I still live with my dad. And, like, I guess, I feel like I'm babbling, but it's just like the Lord has been really good to me. And sometimes I don't see it through, I don't see it in the things that I've been through. But I know that like the Lord has a purpose for me being in the situation that I'm in the situations that I have been in. Like I said before, I'm used to being the only person in the room who looks like me. So I'm an African American woman and I'm single and I'm kind of tall, like I'm 5'7". So everywhere I go, I'm like the tallest person and I'm dark. So you know I stand out like a sore thumb. And like it's been like that ever since I was young. Like I've gone to like I grew up in predominantly Caucasian white neighborhoods. So like elementary school everybody was white. And it's so weird. Like it wasn't until I moved to Boston where like I was in predominantly black school and it was so weird. I felt so awkward. I did not like it. I was like, Lord, where are all these black people coming from? Like I didn't know that I was black, I guess. Like it was such a culture shock. It was so bad. And then like at work, everybody's white and I'm the only black person there. So it's just and then on top of that, like the way I dress is different. So at first I used to fight it and I used to hate it and I used to like complain to the Lord, like, why am I the only person who looks like this? Like, why am I the only person like me? Why am I the only person who acts like this? Like, there's nobody around that I can relate to, that I can talk to about God or like, things that are not secular. But I've come to the point where I stopped trying to fight it, and it's like, Lord, if I'm going to be alone, then I'm going to be alone. Like, I don't mind as long as I'm doing what you want me to do. Like, as long as I'm in your will, then so be it. So that's basically me in a nutshell, I think.
You know, I had a kind of similar. So in early grade school, now I don't say this with any great pride. I'm originally from California.
Oh, you're one of those people. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm from California. Lots of beaches, lots of surfing. No, I didn't do any of that. But in school, going to school, and then I moved up north to Oregon. It took years, and my mom had kept some yearbooks, your yearbooks, and I was looking through the yearbooks, and I was looking through my time of when I went to school in California, and I had no idea. I did not realize this, but now those of you out there, I'm a uh, I don't stick out in a crowd because I'm the size of a large child. The only thing that would help me stick out is if I showed the underside of my arm so that my pale, pasty complexion could reflect the light and blind you in the eye. But looking in the yearbook, I was noticing, like, oh, wow. I had no idea that I was the minority in this class. I had never thought about it. And looking back, and I remember the children I would play with and the houses they would go to, and I was like, wow, this one is Thai, and this one is Japanese, this one is Middle Eastern. And like very few like me, but this wasn't anything like I never even that not occurred to me. It's interesting when you're talking about your for lack of a better word, stepfather, who's more like your father, right?
Yeah.
As you were talking about that, it really illustrates to me though, like the gospel in action, because God is all about adopting us into his family, like going beyond blood, right? And then like what does Jesus say about, when those other disciples say, hey, your mother and your brothers, they're looking for you. And Jesus is like, well, who is my mother? And who are my brothers? Who are my sisters? But those, I'll tell you who, those who do the will of God, that is my mother, that is my brother, that is my sister. And it just kind of reminded me of that as you're talking about that, like how much deeper the bonds are with those who are in Christ than physical blood, our physical attributes, anything like that. Like you're either in Christ or you're not. And
I think you and Jen know more about me than my natural family does. Like, just because I feel like you two are more of my brother and sister than my cousins and my aunts and uncles. Like I have more in common with you than I do my natural family. And that just the kingdom right there.
Yeah, amen. Because like I feel you. I'm surrounded by family around here, but it's like I'm not a part of it. I don't know how else to explain that, but like you and a few others, I totally get what you're saying, because it's like you guys are my family. You treat me more like family than my own family. And so I totally get that.
And that's why I want to find more of us out there in the matrix,
Matrix.
free more minds. And we can be separated by thousands of miles, but lo and behold, this wonderful thing called technology that is often used for evil can be used for good.
Amen to that.
It can be.
And, you're talking about health issues before, migraines. I was looking over my shoulder at Mrs. Wife.
Yeah, Mrs. Wife has migraines too.
I feel you on that, because like, I've been to neurologist after neurologist, and they put me on all kinds of crazy meds, and some of them like really screwed me up, like big time.
Yeah.
So when you were talking about that, I'm like, oh my gosh, because like I understand it. It's ridiculous and it is debilitating, and you can't like do anything. And so when you were talking about how you were going through that, and then you were going through the divorce with your parents, and how you were talking about the stairs, and you just wanted to like throw yourself down, like I get that because like we didn't have stairs or anything, but it's like I've been there where it's like it's hopeless, it feels like.
Yes.
But then like you hear that still small voice and it's like, no, there's hope.
Yep.
And it's in Christ. And I'm just like when you were talking about that, it was just I was really reflecting on my own situation because we as the body, as human beings, like we can't fully understand other people's stories, but there are things that we can understand. We have things that relate, and so like when you were talking about migraines, like I can relate with that because I've had them since I was a kid too, and been through like CAT scans and MRIs, and they just can't figure out what's causing it. And then the neurologist wants to treat you like a guinea pig and just give you every medicine that they have.
Or they're like, "Oh, you just have to bear it." I'm like,
exactly. Yeah, that was.
What do you mean I just have to sit here and bear it?
Yeah, because like I'm on medication right now. I hate it. I don't like being on medication, but this is the only thing that is working. And when I was talking to my doctor, he's like, well, because I was telling him like these are changing. My migraines are changing because I'm sure like when your migraines change, you're supposed to talk with your neurologist and stuff, and they have to like see what's going on. So I was telling him that, and he's like, well, it could be this medication that we gave you because it could cause what is called, do you remember what the word he used? Rebound. And I'm like, oh, how do I know if it's a migraine, like an actual migraine or a rebound? Because they feel so the same. And he's like, well, just stop taking medicine. And I'm like, you don't understand. Like it is literally a pain level of 10. There is no way that I could just like not take anything for it because I would be screaming. So yeah, long story short, so far I haven't had one in a week. Praise the Lord. But when you were talking about that, I'm like, I totally understand. And there's really like a lot of people who has these migraines, and it's just crazy because I didn't realize like how many people actually suffer with them.
Yeah, it's and a lot of people suffer from migraines. Like my most recent doctor, she put me on, I don't remember the name of the medication, but it was a medication for schizophrenia or some kind of disease like that. And but I was hearing voices, and I'm like, are you kidding me? Like I already have a history of like hallucinating, and then you're gonna put me on a medication where I'm hearing voices? No, thank you.
Yeah, they put me on
I don't think so.
On something that caused me to have like really weird dreams. And so I had a dream of like these like dog people. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I gotta get off of this stuff.
Yeah. I had a dream once when like somebody was like chasing me from the train station, and I couldn't outrun the person, so I like turned around and kicked them in between the legs, and like I felt the impact of it. So when I woke up, turns out, well, this was when I was in the house, and my room was in the attic. So you know how like attic ceilings are sloped. So my bed was like in kitty corner to one of the slopes, and like in my dream, I had kicked up my legs so hard that my foot hit the ceiling. So my feet were bleeding when I woke up.
Oh my gosh. That's terrible.
I was like, okay, maybe we shouldn't be on that medication anymore.
There's this idea that I've been kind of playing around with in my head because I think a lot of people know our stance on, various medications. It's the heart of the issue. The reason, what's the reason why you're taking it? Medical, all these things. We know that there's tons of people who take them specifically to abuse them. That's when, for me and and Jenn, and that's when you get into the pharmakia aspect, the sorcery aspect.
Yeah.
But I think some of these powerful uh, chemicals that are being produced, I'm wondering, okay, is look, when you read the Bible, you start to understand that the world or the universe is a much different place than what's been painted to you in either the PBS or the public education system. And there's much more to it than the physical. And there's this very spiritual aspect. And without going too much into detail, it's kind of what I see as part of the fall, the original fall with Adam and Eve, like losing uh, the ability to access that spirituality, spiritual realm, if you will, and kind of aiding in the disconnect from God. And I think some of these medications, I'm wondering if it's so our, there's this theory that our brain is this governing processing unit, and that it's a large filter, okay, and it's filtering a lot of stuff out, and I mean spirit in a spiritual sense. And I'm wondering if some of these different medications out there are wearing or thinning that filter, right? And then making it, so people can access some things that maybe we're not equipped to access. What do you think about
Yeah. I definitely feel like our body is made a certain way. God made our bodies the way He did for a reason. And if you're pumping all these drugs in your system to stop things, it's going to affect your body in another way. You don't know. I mean, that's why all these drugs have side effects. Like you're suppressing one thing, but you don't know that you're affecting something else in another way. And so, especially with these migraine medications, like, yeah, I'm not in pain, but what else are you causing to go wrong? Like, and it's just for there are certain things that, especially like from my experience and like being on medications and like having the experience of like studying to be a doctor, I've just noticed that I don't like using drugs to stop a certain biological or metabolic process just because it's inconvenient for me. You know what I mean? Without getting into too much detail. Like
right?
if my body is supposed to do this, then I'm not going to stop it. Yeah, I'll be in pain. Yeah, it's inconvenient, but like it's natural. That's supposed to happen. So I have to find a way in order for me not to be in pain. I have to find another way around it that's not going to change the way God intended it to work. And like, don't get me wrong, some people do need medication, some people do need drugs. But at the same time, it's like, well, it's a balancing act, I think.
It is, and I think that's where the disconnect has been between modern medicine and the way they treat people today.
Oh yeah, there's a huge
I
disconnect.
I obviously are big proponents of modern medicine. Love it. I think, but a lot of the problem is, and I think a lot of problems with the medical community, not all, is it's about, treating that surface issue and not getting to the root of the issue or trying to find out what the root cause. It's just about, again, kind of, and I think the Bible talks about when Israel's like going off and they're like, you're treating your gangrene, you're just putting bandages on gangrene, essentially. You're rotting from the inside, but we're just putting bandages over that. And, I think that's an issue. And, the thing with, hey, there's plenty of Christians, plenty of just devout Christians, and they have to take medicine. And I think there's grace, and I think there's a element of protection that they receive from God in that. But there's a majority of people out there who have no faith in Jesus, no faith
Yes.
in God. And I think they're walking around in this fog and open up to all sorts of various other things that could attach themselves to whatever kind of altered state of
Mm.
consciousness that a lot of people are walking around in. Um,
Yep.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that, like we were talking a little bit earlier, is like, are you taking this medication for like a reason, or are you taking it just to get a feeling, just to like abuse it? You know what I
Right.
mean? I think that plays a
Right.
big role too, because when you take it, just to get that feeling and stuff, then it's more like pharmakia type.
Yeah. I completely agree. I was speaking to a friend of mine. I think it's the same thing with like alcohol or recreational drugs. Like I was he he was a heavy drinker, and like he drank to like relieve his stress. And I was like, I don't understand like why I don't like what in the whole alcohol cultural landscape of alcohol. Like it's just so prevalent in our society now that people just drink to numb the pain or like de-stress or like you see all these commercials on TV about how moms drink alcohol to get away from their kids, and it's like really, like I don't know. It's just it's there has to be some spiritual component to it. Like why people are finding it's like a quick fix to whatever problems or perceived problems that people have in their life instead of just turning to the Lord. Like I'm going to turn to pharmacia or I'm going to turn to alcohol, and it really hurts my heart to see that. And I just like all you have to do is just accept Jesus. Like, he can take away your pain.
we always
But
seem to, as human beings, take something and fiddle with it and twist it, contort it. I mean,
mm-hmm.
almost the way the enemy does. I mean, you think about the wine that Jesus drank. I mean, today would just be a little bit harder than grape juice, but we've got things that'll knock you on your feet now,
Yeah,
and
that was the good stuff.
well, it's like, what's the purpose of that? I mean, get to they drank, a lot of times they drank wine in Jesus' time to kill whatever parasites, may have
Mm-hmm.
been in the water. Most of us, I'm not talking about
Yep.
us
Or it was
as,
like an anesthetic or something.
yeah, yeah,
There's like it does have it has its purposes, but like we twisted it away from probably what it was naturally intended for.
right. And so I love all these directions and where the conversation can go.
Oh, yeah. I was gonna say, while you were talking real quick, is it when you guys are talking about how like the people that are in the world, right?
Mm-hmm.
They take these like different things to try to fill that space where Jesus is, right? Or where Jesus is supposed to be
Mm-hmm.
in our life. Yesterday, I was reading about the prodigal son, and it just reminded me of that passage where, he goes out and he takes all the, what is it called? His like possessions, right? And he goes and squanders that. And then he
Mm-hmm.
sells himself to work, but he isn't getting fed. And it's like there's an emptiness there. And he does that for a while, and then he remembers, like my father's servants, they get fed, and so then that's where he repents and says that like I'm not even worthy to be your son and stuff like that. And then it's like
Mm-hmm.
his father welcomes him, and it reminded me of that, because I'm like, that's what the world like does. That's what people in the world do, is they do all these things and to try to fill that space, but in the
Mm-hmm.
end, I mean, there's still that hunger there, and they can't fill
Mm-hmm.
it. And so we can only fill that,
And
with
yeah,
Jesus.
and then they wonder why they can't fill it, so they try and find something else to fill it with. And it's like you said, you can only fill it with Jesus, but people don't want Jesus.
Yeah.
So we were talking about family a little bit earlier, and it's interesting how you mentioned that, because I guess one of the things that I was going to ask is how has your faith, or has your specifically your faith in Jesus Christ brought you into conflict with family or with friends or, I mean, with people in the community?
Mm, yes. Okay. Yes. About to get deep now. Okay.
Let's
Might have to,
dig.
might hurt some people too in the process, but I'm sorry in advance. So, it brought me into conflict, one major conflict, with my mom because, we don't believe in, remarriage after divorce. So if you get divorced, you can't get married. So that's still technically your husband
Mm.
or that's still your spouse until, one of you die. Then you're no longer under the marriage covenant. So with my mom, she cheated on my dad. Um, and I later found out, like I thought it was just like one occasion, but it was actually like throughout their whole marriage, most of the times they were married. But she so when she left, like she came back and I guess she tried to reconcile with my dad, but I think she also wanted to like get married to her boyfriend, for lack of a better word. But I I told her like, we don't believe in marriage. Like, I don't understand how you been going to church this whole time, but you know what the Bible says, heard the word, yet you wanna get married to some other guy that's not your husband. She's like, yeah, I know, but I still want to find a way for us to be together. And I was like, well, technically the only way you can be together is if dad dies. So what, you gonna kill dad? Like I don't what do you want to happen? How do you see this happening? So that's kind of been like a slight bump in our relationship. And I think like after that conversation, we just like don't talk about it now. And she's even like living in sin with another guy right now, but she's just not trying to get married. So I was like, okay. And then it's just awkward for me because I see her with all these guys, and I'm like, he's not my dad. Like, why? What are you doing with these other men? And then you want me around these men, and you want me to pretend what? Like like I, like that I accept them, that I'm happy for you. I can't do that. And yet she consistently puts me in these situations where I have to like interact with these guys that are not her husband. So it gets a little awkward sometimes, but I'm just like, I know it's my mom. I have to love her. Honor thy mother and thy father. I know, but I don't know. Like, do I really have to, Lord? Like, she's doing all this stuff, and like, it's just, I pray for her. I continually pray for her because I know she's at this point, she must be like willfully sinning. Well, and she's willfully in these situations where she knows she's not supposed to be, but she keeps doing it. So I keep praying that like the Lord doesn't turn over into a reprobate mind because I don't want my mom to be lost. It's like my mom, I love her, but she's like so sometimes that's a struggle for me. But yeah, I don't know. There's like some things like out of your control. Only God knows, and like you can just the only thing that you can do is just keep praying for that person. So that's how I'm handling that situation.
Yeah, that's I think that's the best thing to do because,
Mm-hmm.
you know, that kind of reminds me of like my dad because my dad, I don't really have a relationship with him, but
Mm-hmm.
he's like that. He has, multiple different like girlfriends at different times and for him it's just like he's using them for, their money or whatever um
Mm-hmm.
that is. And so I pray the same thing as like, Lord, for him, like wake him up, turn him back to you and just like open his eyes to what he's doing.
Right.
And I think it's important to be the example around. I think
Mm-hmm.
that adds to the spiritual responsibilities that we as Christians have, um, demonstrating our faith not only in word but by deed and
Mm-hmm.
action, and letting the fruit of the Spirit come forth. And um, it, yeah, I think that's important. I think because sometimes people are only responsive to some sort of visual type of example. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you never know. You never know.
Right.
Um, you could find that one person, marry that one person, and then you're happy. You're both happy for years. And someone else looking is like, why do they have that happiness? I don't have that happiness. Why?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and hopefully that would stir and cause reflection. And I mean, that's God working. And so you never know.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Have you lost any friends because of your faith?
Yes. I lost a lot of friends actually over this subject of divorce and remarriage. Oh my goodness. So, my first job at when I was working at the bank, I had a friend, and her mom. Well, let me back up. So one day I invited her to a Bible study. She came with me and my dad, and so one of the couples in our church at that time were getting married. So it's like all the messages the pastor was teaching on had to do something with marriage. And so it just so happens that this night he was talking about divorce and remarriage. So my friend was like, "Oh, so when you get divorced, you can't get remarried?" And I was like, "No, I can't." And he said, "Well, what if the husband beats the wife?" And I'm like, "You still can't get remarried. Technically, it's still her husband." And she's like, "What, is my mom supposed to be miserable for the rest of her life?" And I'm like, "Well, who says that a man is going to make her happy? Like, uh, God is God is well, her happiness would be in the Lord, or her happiness shouldn't be dependent on a man. Like, you don't need a man to make you happy." I don't understand why. Well, this is me. Like, I don't understand why. Like, she thinks her mom has to get remarried. Like, maybe she needs that time to like heal. But I didn't say that.
Mm.
But like needless to say, like after that night, she she never spoke to me again. Like, okay, sorry. And then most recently, I had my faith tested because I met a guy online and thought I was in love. He was so cute and he was fine and he was everything I thought I wanted, but he was divorced. I
Mm.
was like, man. So I just cut it off with him. And it's like, so at this point, I'm like, I can't control what people think about that particular subject. I know what I believe and what I was taught and how the Lord uses that particular subject, for the lack of a better word, in my life. I know what that means for me. I don't judge other people who are remarried, but for me, I can't do it. So, and I just trust the Lord to work in that area. Even if my grandma keeps asking me when she's going to have the grandbabies, and I'm like, well, you're just going to have to talk to Jesus about that because no time soon.
Yeah, that's a touchy subject for a lot of people. It's
It is.
very normal for our culture to be with multiple individuals throughout your
Mm-hmm.
lifetime. And something that and it's basically, I mean, the marriage itself has lost its significance over the
Mm-hmm.
generations. Um, for a lot of people, it's just some sort of contractual binding contracts for tax purposes later on,
Right.
or
Or
kind of
it's just a piece of paper.
right. And me and Jen have talked about marriage, and we're not we're not well known enough for enough people to tear down our tear down our walls and kick in our door, because we're kind of along the same line in that marriage itself is the physical embodiment. Essentially, it's the best way that God can use these 3 or 4 dimensions, if you want to count time, to illustrate what his relationship is with the church,
Mm-hmm.
with us. Marriage allegory is used all throughout the Bible,
Mm-hmm.
especially in the Old Testament,
Yep.
especially when he's talking about Israel. And then later on, when the kingdom splits, Israel and Judah, and
Mm-hmm.
liking them to adulteresses, adulterers, and because yeah, the relationship that you have, and not with multiple people, but with one person, just like there's one God,
Right.
and it's an exclusive relationship, right? And each day with
Mm-hmm.
that one person, you're growing and you're learning and about each other. I think a lot of people don't communicate as much anymore. A lot of people uh, divorce over irreconcilable differences or whatever. That should never have
Mm-hmm.
been a thing,
Right.
because in a relationship or in a marriage that's sanctified by God, it should reflect your relationship with God. And
Mm-hmm.
there's communication like with God. There's discovering and learning new things about your your significant other each day, just like a
Right.
relationship with God. Um,
Mm-hmm.
you come to him, the closer he comes, like you with your spouse. And
Yep.
it's exclusive, and it's something that Jesus said. And Jesus said, man and woman get married. And it wasn't man's and woman's, not multiple. And if you notice, Jesus and everything that he's doing, he's trying to take it back to Eden, back to when Adam and Eve walked in the garden with God.
Mm-hmm.
And it was Adam and Eve, co-equal heirs, you know. And again,
Yep.
like me and Jen have talked about this, like we are equals, we are co-equals, though we have different roles.
Right.
I may be the covering, she's my support, though. And it works in tandem with each other. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, society and culture has degraded over the generations.
Yeah.
And again, another part of the multifaceted attack plan of the enemy. And
Mm-hmm.
it's,
And yeah, I feel like just because someone told me once, like, oh well, I know a lot of people who've gotten divorced and remarried and have children. Like, does God not bless their marriage? Like, and it's like, just because God allows it to happen doesn't mean that it's necessarily blessed, or like it doesn't mean that it's necessarily okay. I mean, I didn't say this because I don't want to hurt the person's feelings, but like, just I don't know. Like, that's not the way it was supposed to be intended.
Right.
That doesn't mean that you can do it.
I mean, that's the thing in the Old Testament. I mean, I think polygamists try to use, the fact that so and so had so many wives, and or Solomon had like 700 wives and all of these
Mm-hmm.
things, and not realizing like the people did what they wanted to do. The Bible just
Yeah.
merely records what they did.
Yeah, it doesn't mean that it's like blessed by God just because Jacob had, like Leah and Rachel and I don't know how many
Mm-hmm.
their, servants and stuff. Doesn't mean that God like
Mm-hmm.
blessed each one of those like
Right.
marriages.
Right.
And children who are the product of that, luckily, God being just, they're not, you know, judged on that. They're their
Right.
own individuals. And so like, but it's something that has become a really normal thing. And it's like, I try not to, I don't talk about it a whole lot because like, I don't want to sound like haughty or like, oh, da, da, da.
Mhm.
Um, but like when our daughter goes to play with her friends, most most of them, let's say 3 out of 4, there she gets kind of sad because on the weekends, a lot of them are at their dad's house because again, they're either living with their mom or they're living with their dad.
Mhm.
And but we were just noticing it like it's a very common thing nowadays.
Yeah, very common.
Yeah, and I think that is a way for like the enemy to like get in, like fracturing the like family unit and stuff.
Mhm.
Seeing all this stuff around again places another importance on we as believers again shining that light and being an example so that someone can ask one day like there's something odd about you, something different, but we're supposed to be that peculiar oddity, supposed to be that thing set apart. And so, I mean, with all that, like serving the Lord for you, I mean, what does serving the Lord mean to you? And like, how has that impacted your life?
Good question. Because that's something that I struggle with. Like, I feel like I'm not serving the Lord, or if I am, like, I don't know. Like, yes, I should say that. Like, yeah, I fast, I pray, I go to church on Sunday, I read my Bible. In that aspect, yes, I'm serving the Lord. But I feel like there's something that I'm supposed to be doing. There's something more I can do for the kingdom that like I want to do, but I don't know what that looks like or what that is. So like I just keep praying to the Lord that He'll show me or direct my path and show me like, what more I can do for the kingdom. And I may already be doing it, but I don't know. But I like, and there's a lot of times where I prayed like, if I'm not supposed to be here, Lord, show me, or if I'm supposed to be somewhere else, Lord, show me. And like part of me, like I am not patient. There are instances where like I want to go here and I want to do this and I want to do this, and the Lord's like, no, you need to stay here. You need to stay where you are. And like there, like I will. And I've noticed a lot of times in my life where I've made plans to like do something, and I was about to do it, and the Lord stopped me, or the Lord like put some sort of block in my way where I couldn't do that, and I was like, okay, Lord, I get it. I'm not supposed to do that. Or the Lord will stop me from going somewhere, and He's like, oh, okay, I'm not supposed to be there. So I'm learning to be more patient and wait on the Lord and wait for Him to show me where I need to go, to show me what I need to do. One particular example, like I was one of my previous jobs, like I was kind of getting restless and like feeling like I didn't belong there, and like I needed to do something, but I didn't know what it was. So I was like, I was praying to the Lord, like if you want me to stay here, I'll stay here. But if you want me to go, like I need you to show me what I should do, like where I should be. And the day after I prayed that, I got laid off. And I was like, oh, okay. And then like people were looking at me weird, like, aren't you upset? Why aren't you crying? And I was like, no, I'm okay. Like, because
Hmm.
apparently I wasn't supposed to be here in the first place, and I've overstayed my welcome. So peace out. And then we ended up moving. So it's like, oh, okay, I get you, Lord. I see it. And then another instance where I think, oh, things. So that thing after that job, I had been laid off and I was out of work for a year. So it was coming up to like March of the next year where I was kind of feeling like, again, I was feeling antsy and like feeling desperate. Like, Lord, like I'm running out of my savings. I need to find a job soon. I don't know what to do. Like I can't find a job. I'm looking. I need you to show me where I need to go. Like, what do I need to do? month after I prayed that job, that month after I prayed, I got a job. And it was a year to the day that I got laid off from the previous job. I was like, okay, thank you, Lord. Appreciate it.
Mm.
So, like, and there's just instances where that keeps happening where, like, I'm waiting on the Lord, but then I don't know where I need to go next or how long I should be waiting. And I pray, and then He gives me the answer. So it's like, yeah, I'm, and then even thinking about it, it's like, oh, okay, so apparently there's a lesson in there that I'm not learning, but I definitely need to be more patient and wait on the Lord. So I think now I'm content where I am, and I'm going to try and use the skills and talents that I have to do whatever it is that I can do. And if I shouldn't be doing it, then I know the Lord will show me, or the Lord will tell me. And if there's something else I need to do, then the Lord will show me or tell me. But that's where I am now.
I think it's important to never downplay the act of prayer and fasting, especially intercessory. Did I even say that right? Accessories. Intercessory.
Intercessor, please. Yes, intercessory.
Intercessory prayer. Because those are the individuals that it's a blessing. I think some people don't realize how much of a blessing it is that we have the chance and opportunity to participate in that aspect of the, of ministry. I mean, that was something that was that the prophets of the Old Testament did, and they had to go through all sorts of things and meet qualifications and everything. We have that access, and it's interesting that you were saying you feel like you're at this point, you're on the precipice of there's something next, possibly. And that's exciting. And then also the reality, because I've been there several thousand times thinking, that's it. I see it. God, of course. And then nothing. Or like, we're going over here. We're good. And then nothing. And then my biggest wine fast was like, we're going to Japan. And then 2020 happened. And I was like, that's not happening.
Right.
And that's a little bit like, what I do is I think like, okay, I think I put together the pieces of this puzzle because this piece fits exactly right here. No, we start thinking we've got things figured out, and then God shows me like, no, actually you don't.
But then there's times where like He confirms something, like you're supposed to do this, and then there's like that door is opened for you. And I think that's really exciting too, and encouraging at the same time. Like, Lord, you heard my prayers.
Oh, I mean, like, because we're thinking like, okay, we're gonna get moved out of here. He's gonna relocate us, and then like they're bringing in all these mandates for jobs. Get the job or no job, and then it came to my job, and I was like, well, I know the answer
That's
there.
a sign, Lord. That's a sign.
that's the main. That's the main thing that keeps us where we're at. And I was like, wow, okay, this is it. Interesting. Let's see where this goes until they're like, here, take this exemption. And that was like a religious exemption. And I was like, my reasons aren't religious. I can't in good conscience sign this. I'm like, oh, okay. And so like, I'm getting ready, like, okay, I wonder where we're all from here. And then they come back like, because I'm also like, okay, God, what do you want? Where are we? And then they come back with another exemption, like we changed the wording around Because look, we don't want to lose you. Read this one and see if it fits in. And like it was like a morality thing. I was like, okay, this is where you want me, God.
So that concludes our interview with Rachel, part 1. And I will put a preview of part 2 right now.
It would feel like, again, it was always at night. I don't know why, but it's always at night. I would wake up in the middle of the night and it felt like somebody was like getting on in the bed with me. Like the mattress would actually dip down, and then I feel like this hot searing hand on my back, and it would freak me out. And like I couldn't do anything. I couldn't respond. Like I would just, not that I had like sleep paralysis, like where I couldn't move. I would just not move because I was so scared that if I did move, I would see somebody there. So that would happen a lot.